On episode 318 of the podcast, we are talking about how to get top-tier media attention and exposure to help propel your video business. And my guest, Stephanie Lee, teaches her simple pitch like a pro framework that you can start using today. What's up, friend? I'm Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas. And this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast. This is the show for corporate and commercial filmmakers that are wanting to build a more sustainable video business, one that thrives and not just survives. I'm so happy that you are here. Can I just say, I gotta take a breath. Now, I can't take a breath. By the time I'm listening to this, or by the time you're listening to this episode, I'm taking a deep breath. For the last, I don't know how many months, I have been working on so many different things inside of this business, as well as my corporate video production business, Tell Studios, and just take some breaths with me. We did the 5-day challenge. When I'm recording this, I did it last week. After it was over, Saturday, I can't remember. We were busy with friends, but then Sunday, I didn't do anything. I started a fire, laid on our couch. I watched some football. I took a nap. But man, that was very draining. It was super fun, really, really fulfilling. If you missed out on the 5-day challenge, there was so much goodness, and the VIP was awesome. We got to hang out with a whole bunch of people, do some live Q&A and coaching, and that was super fun and fulfilling. And then in the meantime, we launched the 10X Filmmaker, which I'm very, very excited about. You probably have seen ads or heard about it recently. And currently the doors are closed, but make sure that you're on our wait list and you'll get notified later this year when we reopen the doors. But I'm very, very excited about this coaching community where we're going to have ongoing content. I'm going to be delivering masterclasses each month, and then there's going to be community and accountability inside of that community. So I think this is going to be a place where people are going to get the most stuff done inside of their business. So super pumped about that. And then tomorrow we've got our all-day EOS meeting. This is what we do for our production business once a quarter. So we have an EOS implementer, and it's just a full day of planning for the year. And then we're going to make quarterly goals. And then outside of that, after that meeting, starting on Monday is when I'll begin our my quarterly rocks or quarterly goals. So a lot going on. My EA had to leave. She got sick and just kind of had some life change stuff going on. So I've just been drowning in emails and all the things. So it has been rough, let me just say. But in the meantime, I'm super grateful. I love just the fact that I get to do this. I get to be here with you and hopefully just keep bringing more goodness to your earballs. And for those of you who are watching, your eyeballs as well. Yes, there is such thing as earballs. Google it. Just kidding. I'm making that up. I have no idea. There might be earballs. There might not be. I'm going to Google it after this. Today, you're in for a super special treat with my friend Stephanie. She brings the heat, and it's going to be great. So stay tuned for that. If you have not taken my free workshop, I really kind of lay out 3 foundational things that I've learned over the 18 years of me being in the video production space, what has worked well to grow my video business to generating revenue over $1 million more than once per year. So go check that out. You can get access to that totally free at studiosherpas.com/workshop. It is my gift to you in hopes to help you build a stronger foundation for your business so that you can be doing this for a really long time. That is my hope for you. And with that, let's roll the tape and hop into today's episode. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to this episode. Today, I've got with me Stephanie Lee, who is a media strategist and founder of Clout Monster, where she teaches entrepreneurs, creatives, and businesses how to get top-tier media attention and exposure. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
What up, Ryan? Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad that Graham has introduced us. We've gotten some time prior to this call to be able to hang out and learn a little bit more about each other. But for those, let me just preface. One of the reasons why we're on this show together is because your emails, the emails that you, when I signed up for the download that you had offered, that Graham had shared with us, I started getting your emails. And your writing style, it just makes my heart so happy. It's so good. It's so personalized to you, but there's so much that resonates with me. So I love your perspective and just how you are able to really, like with words and emojis, like your personality just comes forward. And I think that is so good in this world that, unless you're doing video, it's really hard to differentiate yourself and for people to really see, but you do it so well with text and copy. So bravo.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ryan. That was like the highest compliment, and I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you to emojis for allowing me to
like
also convey.
I just want to give a shout out to emojis.
Emojis definitely do a lot. I don't even remember a time when we didn't have emojis. How did people communicate back then? I just don't get it.
I seriously felt like you were on stage and like just giving a shout out to, I just want to say, thank you to the Academy and also to emojis. This wouldn't be possible without you.
Gotta give credit where it's due.
So your the history of your work and like how you ended up where you're at today. We did not get into just the hundreds of thousands and probably millions of people who have read the stuff that you've been overseeing, that you've written, the impact, the influence that you've had. Like, I don't want it to go understated. So give us a picture of, did you just come out of a rock one day? See, just kidding. I used your thing. And like you were this like incredibly gifted writer. Where did this start? And what was the epiphany moment where you realized like, oh my goodness, like I actually could monetize. Like this could be a job for me. I could help a lot of people with my writing.
Wow. So many interesting things. And I'm so glad you brought up, you sang the praises of my newsletter writing. The reason I feel that I could write as openly as I can and also kind of let my personality come through is that honestly, I've been writing for a very, very long time. And I'm sure anyone who's worked on a craft, especially one that conveys emotion and thoughts and storytelling, like it takes time to find your voice. And honestly, it took me over a decade. I've actually been writing on the internet, getting published since 2001. And this was back when I was a freshman in high school, honestly, where the internet was still very, very young. And there was a site that happened to take submissions. And I was just, this is like the nerdy part of me coming out. I was writing video game strategy guides and just publishing them, not thinking that I was able to monetize this, that this would turn into like a career. This is like before Google was super, super popular or came into like high prominence. So that history of writing on the internet for so long has allowed me to have that voice come out. And I'm so glad that you feel it. You as a reader can feel that. And so I've taken that skill and just over time working at publishing teams. I worked at the first writer gig, which, like I said, I didn't know I was able to turn this into a career and get paid for my writing. This niche publication, which you might have heard of, is called IGN.com. Yeah. They do comics, video games, movies. They have like 80 million visitors per month. The last stat I checked like 8 years ago. So I was an editor there writing. And so I took that newsroom experience, just being able to produce content at a high volume and understanding what the audience wants, and parlaying that experience to other publications like bodybuilding.com, a fitness website where I was also an editor. And at the same time, this writing and these experiences carried me across multiple industries where I discovered like writing can take you across many different industries as long as you know how to tell a story, as long as you know, you have a strong grasp of writing. You could understand any industry, tell stories that people want to read about, that people want to hear about. And so this naturally kind of propelled me into the media and just getting published in mainstream media outlets like New York Times, GQ, New York Magazine. I became a freelance writer after those like full-time editor gigs. I was a digital nomad for a while. And this is before remote work became cool, right? So my experiences of being a digital nomad and being this freelance writer, figuring out like what are the best stories editors at publications want to hear about and read about, and that their readers want to read about, I was able to basically systematize and figure out how to get these stories published, how to get myself published, which eventually led me to clients wanting to learn about that. Where I was really able to cultivate this PR and media skill for clients and other people other than myself, because I'd figured it out as a freelance writer, was when I was working with an entrepreneur named Ramit Sethi of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He's basically a personal finance guy. He's an author of a book by the same name.
Yep, read it.
And he has like legitimate ideas. And he also has a very successful online business, sells courses and stuff like that. So I ran his press to get him to New York Times bestseller back in 2019, built his products. And so that experience has allowed me to, take all of these, take the PR, take the media, take the online business side of things to now have Clout Monster, where I teach other creators, entrepreneurs, online business owners across many industries, because I've already myself have floated across many industries to get media and use that to grow their business.
I love that. I think the burning question for us all right now is, what video game are you currently building a strategy out for?
Well, I haven't written one in a while, but if I were to, I am currently it's kind of a slog, this game. I don't know if you've played it. It's called Persona 5. I don't know how nerdy and down the rabbit hole we want to get into in this arena. People were like, wait a second, I thought this was a business podcast.
Well, we all have, we got to take breaks here and there, hobbies, things to do on the weekend.
Honestly, I take a lot of storytelling inspiration and just business inspiration from the video game industry.
Yeah.
Like they've figured out a lot of great models and ways to like hook people, capture people's interests and attention. So
that's funny. It's funny.
Say video games rot your brain.
Yes,
it's not true.
Exactly. This is a very relevant story for me. When I was in high school, I spent a ton of time playing this game called Civilization. Sid Meier's Civilization. I don't know if you know it. Strategy game. It's basically like, okay. I just probably 3 days ago, this game has been on my iPad. I haven't played it probably since I bought it. I bought it on a Black Friday sale, like probably I guess it would be 3 years ago. And anyway, it's on my iPad. I loaded it up because I was like, I have 2 minutes and let me just see, because I finished something. I was like, I just need some free time. And I took all my social media apps off my phone. So I was like, what do? I got to waste time somehow. So I load up the game and it was like a 2-minute intro, right? Like this trailer. And it brought back like all these memories. It was such a cool storytelling, just there were I think there were a few words that this woman had spoken to like her husband or something like that right at the beginning. And then like he kind of goes into this dream state of like, going back in time and then like all the way to the future, creating rockets and all this stuff. I'm like, that's why I love this game, because you get to like do all this stuff. But I just love that you said that, because video games, man, there's no limit to the storytelling, and it's amazing even today, like the movies that we're making. And some of the technology that we're creating because of what people dreamed up in video games and said like, hey, I wonder if we could actually like make that and create that. I think that's fascinating.
So cool. So cool. I could talk about and geek out about storytelling in video games and video games in general all day.
Yeah. Well, so let's take like more your other gift, not video game. Let's talk about like copywriting. So one of the things that I think I struggle with, when Graham introduced you to our mastermind, he was like, hey, if you want to get some press, you want to, whatever, like get more exposure. Because the way that he was getting press, the way that you were helping him, I mean, it is fascinating. It's fascinating from the moment you guys started working together. I feel like he was like pretty much a normal guy, and now I'm like, man, I feel weird texting him. Like I should pay him to like say like, hey man, what's going on? Because he's so famous. So congrats on all that. But way to like help me lose my friend. Just kidding. I'm just kidding about all that. But my point being, as I'm looking, he's got a book. So like, yes, getting PR, getting more exposure for the book to help, ultimately drive, build his email list, get more exposure, sell more courses, memberships, blah, blah, blah. But as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, I run this video production business. For me, I'm kind of like, I don't ever, there's the local paper. There's always like a little business being featured for this or that or whatever. We do work all over the world. Right, we have clients that span the United States, and then we have opportunities overseas. But I still like it's hard for me to understand like what is the value? Like why should we even be having this conversation today? Well, I guess my hope is that you can convince me and say like, Ryan, like here's some value in like how press could help grow your video business, right? The name of the show. Otherwise, yeah, it's good to have smart copy on your website, engaging emails that, nurture your audience, whatever. But can you talk a little bit, like, can you convince me that, hey, no, this is a good idea, worth pursuing as a service-based business, kind of the way that I've described my video production business. It's the way that a lot of us have our businesses set up. How can what you do or what you specialize, how can that be good for me?
That's a bit of a loaded question. So here's the way I see it. With your business, from what I understand, you teach people, certain principles about business, how to streamline their video production business, be a better entrepreneur, have certain mindsets that allow them to thrive in entrepreneurship and just basically run a better, more profitable business. Right?
So, well, let me just interrupt you. Let's think in the context, because I feel like from that perspective, as I'm teaching, right, one day I'll probably have a book for filmmakers, people that are trying to grow their video business. But then for all of us that have a video business, what is the value for us in this service basis? We're looking to, find new clients that will hire us to do videos for them. How can getting PR, what kind of PR should we be looking for? Is that really, I still am trying to figure out social media. Is that still really valuable? Like, do I need to spend a lot of time and energy there? Now, Graham's like, hey, you should, consider getting in media and PR, like to help, get more video clients. Can you convince me that that's a good idea?
Right. So that was kind of what I was getting at, is because you're sharing knowledge, whether you yourself are sharing knowledge with your people, a videographer or someone, a solopreneur, trying to get clients and trying to convince the client that they're the right choice. Right. This is an industry of credibility, right? People like to work with people they know, like, and trust. Right. And so something like PR, media, getting into publications that are very well respected and hard to get into because they're so highly vetted. Yeah. There are a lot of like hidden signals there where this person got, featured in Forbes because they had a great story, they had something to share, they had valuable knowledge, the writer or editor, it passed their muster. They just felt that this person had something really valuable to share with the world. So those hidden signals tell, potential clients or your audience that you have credibility in that whatever it is that you're teaching, that you're sharing with them, it's worth listening to because it's been vetted that other people believe in it. And it's essentially, we're talking social proof here.
Right.
PR, getting published in the media is another form of social proof on a very different level than, say, like a 5-star review or testimonials, which they're powerful as well. You know, those are things that, again, hidden signals to potential customers and clients when we're trying to make quick decisions on who we want to listen to, who we want to work with. There's so much noise and so many people now trying to like sell maybe the same thing or have a similar business positioned very similarly. How do we start to cut through the noise and know who to talk to? And this is what press and media can do for you, is really elevate your credibility and beyond the exposure, beyond the growth that could be a side effect of being on certain features, being on certain publications, you're building credibility for yourself. And when it comes to the client making so many, you know, decisions on who they're going to hire, they're going to go with someone who basically has the social proof that they're looking for.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it just makes it way easier to make that decision. That all makes sense. And, you know, I mean, I was kind of playing it up like, oh yeah, like I would never do PR. But even in the context that you're sharing, you know, I see if I had something on my website that said like featured in Forbes or an entrepreneur, and then it could link to an article that talks about, you know, the importance of story or how your brand story should flow or anything like that. I think where my brain has always kind of gone is like getting business from that particular article, but using it as social proof. Like if somebody joined my email list and letting them know within the first email or two, like, hey, you know, here's an article that we did with Forbes, and like any of that. I remember last year or earlier this year, I had a client that was interviewing us. They were interested in hiring us, but they were going to go with this other guy who kind of specialized in their industry. And then when I found out who it was, I actually said, hey, is it so-and-so? And they're like, yeah, like, how do you know so-and-so? I'm like, this person's in my community. And I educate filmmakers and other, you know, corporate commercial videographers that are in the business side of, you know, doing what, and they're like, oh, you're like the kind of like the leader of this thing. I'm like, well, I mean, you know, sort of like I've got a weekly podcast, blah, blah, blah. And so that my credibility went like way up. And he's like, well, I don't want to hire the guy that you're, you know, he's buying your course and learning from you. We want to hire you, the one that's teaching all this stuff. So I'm totally like bought in now. I'm like, oh yeah, if I have any credibility that I can put on my website or, you know, put in a video or email marketing, anything else in that we need to be thinking about as we're considering, is this worth it?
You know, the nature of visibility and press, you know, the more press you get, the more visible you get, and naturally the more opportunities open up. Like you mentioned Graham, once he got on certain platforms, just more opportunities came up. More people were reaching out. People were inviting him on podcasts. People were like, oh my gosh, we should do this thing together. So, and that's just like, while you can't exactly control what opportunities you get, some just kind of pop up. There are definitely strategic ways to like leverage your press credibility to negotiate new opportunities. Like for example, with I mentioned Ramit Sethi. So our PR campaign, because I had worked with him full time for years. By the time I'd left in 2021, he had so much press, like over 40 to 50 just hits in the media. And by that point, he was a go-to personal finance expert. Every journalist, everyone, anytime they wanted a story, he would be one of the people that comes up. Yeah. So at a certain point, it becomes this sort of marketing engine that works for you. And you don't really have to do that much. And it continues to grow and work for you. And I bring this up because not just to say his volume of coverage, that has led to, I think I'm allowed to say this because he has it somewhere on his site, but he has a Netflix show coming out.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I'm not going to say that. I am going to
say it.
that level of visibility and exposure has catapulted him to a lot of different opportunities, let's just say.
Yeah.
And you can't deny the network effect that having press and being so visible gives you, because all of a sudden people want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And when you know more people, that opens up more opportunities. That just leads to growth. If you're smart about leveraging these opportunities to get more opportunities or connect with people, et cetera, et cetera. There's like this whole game you play in the media with PR and media. It's not just a matter of like getting exposure on one article and then that's it. Like you can do so much with it, even one feature.
Yeah.
So this is kind of to share a little bit of that world of like, once you're playing the eyeballs game, so many things open up, and there are ways to be strategic about that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's so attractive about what you're talking about is having an engine that's sort of like running, or momentum. You know, I feel like right now, like it with Graham, because I know him, you know, it's just like he started out as like this little snowball and just like rolling down the hill and getting bigger and bigger. And now, like, I mean, I would almost say like he could like take his foot off the gas, and just like there's this natural momentum of people, like he's got enough stuff out there, other people are finding him, that will just continue. So you know, running a video business, one of the hardest parts is, you know, we get into, you know, we get a big job, we get into it, and then we stop like reaching out or trying to find our next job, because we're just so focused on this one that we get that one done, and it's like, okay, what do I do next? I don't have any work. Like, okay, now I gotta start reaching out to our old clients or reach out to some new ones, and hopefully I can start nurturing some relationships and find some new clients. And it's just like the feast or famine to think or to know that there could be something out there that's running alongside of us, that's running ahead of us, you know, while we're kind of back here doing our thing and forgetting like, oh, I should be, you know, trying to build more relationships and network, but that there are things that can continue to bring in new leads and new opportunities and get more exposure and even like build trust while you're not doing anything, because it's out there and it's working for you. I think that's incredibly attractive as someone who's been worn down.
And you know, one published article has an incredibly long shelf life. Ramit has this Fortune profile in the Fortune magazine, which I had nothing to do with. It was like many years before we started working together. So it was like back in 2011, 2010 or something like that he got that profile. And he still uses that in his marketing material. He still uses that and like is very strategic about using it, because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And people are not going to look at it and be like, man, that was from 10 years ago. You're not credible anymore. Like, if anything, he's continued to gain credibility. So there's just a long shelf life of press and media that people can search for and find that article from years ago. You know, these publications have a high domain authority. So, you know, if you talk about the right things, you're going to keep coming up on search.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm almost even thinking like, you know, if I make a YouTube video and the YouTube video, you know, is 2 years old, I mean, it definitely helps like bring up on search, but if I find an article like, you know, by like a reputable, you know, publisher or something like that, I'm going to put more value, more stock in that article than I would, you know, a self-published YouTube video probably, right? So I'm hearing what you're saying by like, by having press, it seems like the shelf life, at least for people my age, that the published article is more valuable. So I think I'm like convinced I should do something in this space. So kind of where my mind goes would be like, okay, you know, I think about the big ones like Inc., Entrepreneur, Fast Company. Man, if I could get featured, if I could have some kind of an article in a magazine like that, how do I get the attention of who should I be reaching out to, and how do I let them know, like, hey, I've got a story worth telling? Because I will say that there's this total, like, almost immediately as we're talking about Ramit and Graham and like people who I value and respect and have learned so much from and read their books, I'm like, I haven't written a book. I think I have something to offer, right? So I'm kind of like, I'm over that hurdle because I've got a podcast. I talk about stuff all the time. I'm over that hurdle. Not that I never regress and like, oh man, should I be doing this? Is this helpful? Is this valuable? But to think about these magazines that are like, the creme de la creme, like the ones that I'm like, I read those and learn from and have, like, when I started my business, how dare I like think that I could have something to offer there, like in that space. Cause like, I feel like once you have something there, like you've arrived, like it doesn't get much better than that. So should I maybe shoot for the moon? And then if I fall among the stars, I'm still, in outer space somewhere.
That's definitely one way to think about it. Here's the good news. Like you mentioned, publications you feel that certain publications are just like, wow, the people who are published in those publications, they're celebrities, they've got a book,
right.
they've just, well-known industry experts, yada, yada. Who am I to talk to those people or be on that publication as well? Like, it would be nice, but who am I to want that for myself? That is definitely a huge and very common barrier, I think, that prevents a lot of entrepreneurs and experts from pursuing press to begin with, because they feel like they have to be this big business mogul, like crossed arms, wearing a suit with a giant watch or something. And if they don't have those things. Then they don't belong in the media, which is 100% not true.
Yeah.
Like, sure, some magazine covers perpetuate that notion, makes us think that we need to be this person that we're not, this like incredible, like Elon Musk type.
Yeah.
And of course, Elon Musk types, like their eccentricity gets them headlines. But the good news is a couple things. The first is that the media is always looking for stories. Always, because that's what they basically 100% thrive on. They need stories, and editors are so busy that they're not going to be able to come up with stories all on their own. Right. And so they actually look for interesting people to profile and interesting stories. So that's the first good news, is that the media is always looking for stories.
Okay.
Second is that I truly believe that you and everyone has a story to tell and like unique experiences and lessons to share. And in the entrepreneur space, that's really a bulk of what these stories are, is like, first of all, centered on the person themselves, not like the company. Because now with there's just this trend, and it's been happening for a while, people are just noticing it more now, that when it comes to a company, no one really cares about the company itself, just the actual personality and the person behind it. Like, people want that. They want to hear there's a human interest story there, that there's a human with their own personality, their own stories and experiences. So kind of going back to you, I am sure that you have an interesting story to share with any publication, as long as it's like the right fit. Obviously, thinking that from an entrepreneur angle, you have some sort of entrepreneur story. You were telling it to me before we started recording, like that, we could shrink that a little bit and pull out the more juicy parts, but you were essentially telling me a story that I thought was interesting. I'm like, oh,
which story?
He was president of something.
Oh yeah.
Saying it so casually, like it was no big deal. And so those are like the 2 points I want to just really hammer home, is that one, the media is always looking for stories. Two, you have stories to tell. So when you put those two together, like you tell the right story to the person looking for them, that's how you start getting that traction in media. That's how you start getting attention, media attention.
I love that. The way that you're talking right now is hilarious because you're like, everyone has a story. I'm like, Stephanie, do you know how many of us filmmakers have on our website? Everyone has a story. Let us tell yours. I mean, right? Because it's like, we're all like not all of us, but so many of us like are passionate about human interest stories and brand stories that highlight people. And so, oh my gosh, it's like, I do these audits for these websites for all these filmmakers and we all do it, because like, yeah, that's the thing. So just hilarious. But what the challenge in what you're saying, it's really easy for me to look at like all these potential clients and like, oh my gosh, you have a story. Look at what you've built. Look at your team. Look at how you're helping people. Like, you have a story. I know you don't want to be on camera. I know you don't want to be interviewed. You just want to keep doing your thing because you're so good at it. But the world needs to know. People need to know your story. That's how I sell what I do. But turning the camera, if you will, on us, the filmmaker, the owners of these businesses, it's just like way harder. It's like, I don't really, the story about me being president of this little video association. I'm like, that's not a story. Like, get out of here. Like, that's just like, okay. But to your point, okay, like maybe that is interesting to somebody, but that's just what I do, right? Which is, I'm having a whole inception moment. It's the same thing my clients do. They're just like, this is what we do. It's not interesting. It's just like our day to day. This is who we serve. This is what we love. This is what we're passionate about. We just do it, like, and just get it done.
And then you help them shape their story so that you do emphasize like sort of the highs and lows and make it into something that is really cool, right? And so same deal here,
So interesting.
What you do for clients is what I would do for you to pull out your story that works in the media.
Yeah.
And I guess there are sort of a few nuances when it comes to finding like the right story for media. And so this is probably where people get tripped up.
Yes. Well, help us not get tripped up, please. Take out my notepad here.
Yeah. So let's dive in.
Ryan, I'm glad you asked.
I'm so glad you asked. Let's dive into
the 4 pillars of a...
Let me guru-ize this framework.
Please.
What I'm about to say.
Please do.
I actually do have a framework for this.
Oh, you do? Oh, my goodness.
Yes. So here's the thing about media and editors, and first of all they're so busy, and so thinking about stories, you have to think about it exactly the way they would think about it for them to kind of see the story and agree to write about it. Because as an aside, they're so busy, they don't want to do extra work,
right? Yep.
Right? They just want to have the story presented to them in the perfect way, and then they're willing to write about it. So in order to understand what they want to write about, we're going to talk about basically the 3 major components that your story needs to have. And so I have a framework for this. It's called Pitch Like a Pro, a Pitch Like a Pro framework. And the pro part is actually an acronym, or I guess that's initialism because I get those 2 terms confused, but I think it is an acronym.
I know what you mean, though.
Right. So each of those letters stand for something. So it's hopefully easier for y'all to remember the 3 components. So pitch like a pro. Every media story needs to be pro. And the P stands for popular. The R stands for relevant. And O stands for original. Now put it together. A story needs to be popular, relevant, original, and you must be thinking like, Stephanie, that's freaking obvious. Really, really obvious.
Thanks,
So
Captain
let
Obvious.
me just share, go a little bit more in depth on what I mean and give some examples too. So the first part of pro with popular, if you spend any time reading headlines, reading news, even for like 20 minutes, you'll notice a lot of the articles they talk about, or a lot of the articles that are published, just come up on your news feed, are going to be just popular topics. perennial. They're like perennial favorites, like morning routines, productivity articles, fitness articles. There's just certain things that are always popular in the media. Those are like the evergreen type articles. And then there are things that are like kind of match up with what the current conversation is about. Like there's that whole trend of quiet quitting, and everyone was talking about that. I don't know if you guys caught that trend.
Yep.
So just popular. And if you spend time on the internet already reading, consuming content, I bet you have sort of like this radar already and you have a sense of what's going to do well, what's like kind of in the zeitgeist. So having that sort of finger on the pulse, what's popular, is really, really important, because editors are so focused on that. They want popular stuff, because what that means for them is more eyeballs on their article. Yeah. And at the end of the day, they care about traffic. They care about page views. That's what helps their publication grow and make money and saves their jobs. So they want things that are popular. Something that's relevant is similar to something being popular, but relevancy really refers to what's happening in the news cycle. What's timely, what's newsworthy that everyone's talking about right now. And I mentioned, a trend like quiet quitting. So that's both popular and relevant to the news cycle. And so editors are very receptive to those stories. So I'll just kind of give you an example of like how to turn a single idea into something that's relevant, into spotting that relevance. So when I was working with Ramit, this was back in 2018, late 2018, when we started our PR campaign for his book that was coming out in May of that following year. So you can see, like, as a side note, like when you're thinking about media, you're thinking way ahead of time already. So we were already kind of planning things and getting our first hits. We call them hits in the media. So he sends me this screenshot on Slack. It was a screenshot of a number in his portfolio, and it was all in red, and it said negative $75,000. And I was like, what the heck? He's like, yeah, this is what I lost in my portfolio today. I'm like, holy crap. Remember, he's a personal finance guy.
Right.
I'm like, holy crap. How are you, like, okay? Are you freaking out? He's like, no, I'm like more concerned about what I'm going to watch on Netflix tonight.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, to him, it was so nonchalant. Yeah, but at the same time, here's what was relevant in the world. On Twitter, everyone else was freaking out because the stock market had crashed. So people were losing a lot of money. People were panicking. People were like, oh my gosh, I need to sell, which goes against Ramit's own advice. Yeah. And so this was a story. He had this thing that was happening. He has a stance. He has a perspective. And in the world, the relevant story was the stock market is crashing. So we basically pitched this idea of, I just lost $75,000 and I'm not losing a wink of sleep over this. Here's why. And it's a story that's relevant and also allows him to share his perspective and his kind of expert opinion on why you don't need to worry about this. And because it was so catchy, because it was so relevant for the time, like other outlets picked it up, like Washington Post, Yahoo. So that's an example of capitalizing on what's relevant in the news cycle. Like, how can you tie a story to be relevant and make it so that editors want to write about that story now versus like later. So we went over popular, we went over relevant of the pro framework. The last part, original. This is where people they get stopped in their tracks because they're like, well, I don't have an original idea. Right. Like, everything's been done already. Yeah, right?
Yes. So, I resonate.
The easiest way that I tell everybody to make your story original is to make it a personal story. Right? When you talk about yourself, you talk about your own backstory, your own unique circumstances and lessons. that automatically makes it original, even if like the takeaways are, not entirely original.
Right.
But there's so many universal applicable lessons that the reader will still be able to find valuable. So never discount your lessons and things like that. But originality, or rather a personal story, is so powerful. You can tell it infinite number of ways because you can come at it from different angles. Like, for example, earlier I mentioned that I was a digital nomad for a while. And because this was before remote work was so commonplace, it was a really novel story to be able to travel around the world and work remotely. So I actually wrote about that experience. I wrote about the challenges I faced.
Yeah.
I wrote about it on Lifehacker. It did really, really well. I wrote about it again on New York Times. Went over really well. And I got interviewed again for New York Times about that. Wow. And it just, from there, I have like a total over 7 articles just written on this one experience that was so original to me. So, altogether, like, pitch like a pro, like, thinking of your stories as what's popular, what is going to follow the zeitgeist, what is relevant, like similar to being popular, what are editors caring about, what are people caring about right now, and then original. Your personal story automatically makes it original.
Yeah, man, that's you shared the first two, and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Where are we going? And even like how you describe, like, just bring your own story to it. Even if the call to action or the pillars or the things that you're sharing, even if those are well known and not original, the fact that this is how they've changed you or impacted you, or this is how you're using them, man, that's super rich. And I'm more excited about this idea than I have probably ever been, because I'm always just like, I'm just going to regurgitate. No. Ryan, share it from your like, how has this had an impact on you? That's when people lean in. Sure, yeah, the takeaway, it's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Like, I'm going to remember it. And the way that I'm going to remember that is through the lens of Ryan, how he experienced it, how it changed him, how it impacted him. That's really good. I love that framework. So last big question that I have, I've got this framework. Like, what's a logical next step? If I'm like, okay, I kind of have this idea, it's like half baked or whatever, maybe it's fully whatever. What should be a next step? Like, how do I figure out like what magazine, publisher, like where do I go, and what would you recommend?
Yeah, that is a great question.
Thank you.
The thing I would recommend is, you like yourself, you have some idea of the publication that you already want to be published in. And so what I would encourage people to do is go to these publications, read their articles, and find the ones that are similar to to the story that you would like to tell. And, these would be articles that have profiled other entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yep.
And then read them.
Yeah.
Read the headline, read how they structured the story, and then try to tailor your own story with like a mock headline to emulate that publication as much as possible.
I love it. That's really, really good, really smart. Just go to where you're already kind of like being inspired. And I think I can do that. I actually think that, it's hilarious. Like, going into this episode, I'm like, yeah, this will be good information. I think somebody will get something from it. And here I am. I'm like, got all these notes, and I'm like, okay, I think we're gonna have a follow-up chat after this, Stephanie. So
yeah, of course,
be prepared. I know you're working on some stuff. Definitely, people should just, if you have a generic newsletter, they should sign up for it. But I know you have more than just a generic newsletter. Where can they follow you and get onto your email list? What do you got for us?
Yeah, so people can find me at cloutmonster.com. I write a weekly newsletter there called TLDR. I break down like media trends, share a lot more insights, pitch breakdowns, advice, stuff like that. And I've actually been, since we're like, but at the time we're recording this, we're like approaching year's end. One of the things that we use in-house at the team is a publicity calendar. And so this publicity calendar is basically shows you all the dates across the next 12 months in 2023 so that we talked about what's relevant, right, and popular, so that what editors are thinking about, and you can be able to, you're able to think of stories that match those upcoming dates, so that's going to be top of mind for editors.
Sounds juicy.
I have that publicity calendar for people to look at, have a lot of tips there on what to focus on month to month. So you can find that calendar at cloutmonster.com/calendar. And you'll sign up for the TLDR newsletter as well.
I love it. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. Stephanie, this has been so good. I'm so glad that we got to do this. Thanks for making me laugh. Thanks for inspiring me. Really, really appreciate this time together.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being a joy to talk to. Like, I love the energy. It's so easy to talk to you. So I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Tell all your publisher friends that I'm so easy to talk to. I'm just kidding. Thanks so much, Stephanie. Appreciate you. And best of luck on this new launch. And really excited for you. And we will be having a follow-up conversation. So stay tuned. All right, friend, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Let me know if this was helpful. If you're watching this, leave a comment. Let me know what your big takeaway was. Are you somebody who is motivated to try and get some media attention on your business? Do you think that would be helpful for you? I kind of had an epiphany during the episode. I was like, I feel like this is something that I should do. You can get links to this episode just by going to studiosherpas.com/318. All of the notes from this episode are going to be living there. And you know something? I'm just going to ask for it. Would you do me a huge favor? I haven't done a good job of this, but I need some more. I would love some more reviews on this show. It will help the algorithm. It will help get more eyeballs on the show. And I honestly love seeing those reviews like live forever. So if you want your name to be engraved in the list of people who have reviewed the show, I think we have over 100, which is pretty awesome. Please do that. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well. Or you can just go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and there's a button somewhere that says leave a review. I would love to hear your honest feedback of the show. And if you have anything else and you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to email me. I'm just at ryan@studiosherpas.com. And it'd be great to hear from you, my friend. Let me know how I can make this show better, and let me know how I can help you make 2023 your best year ever. You ready to do this with me? Cool. All right, my friend. I'll see you next week on the next episode or somewhere in between there. Okay? Until then, bye for now.